Jefferson wrote that at 73, to his oldest intellectual adversary turned friend, not as philosophy, as arithmetic, he had spent a life in political combat, and what he observed looking back was a precise and measurable waste, the proportion of suffering produced not by events but by resistance to events that had not yet occurred and, in most cases, never would. Most people understand letting go as an emotional achievement, a state of peace arrived through effort, practice, or sufficient suffering. But the psychology of acceptance is not primarily about emotion. It is about cognitive architecture. The mind that is occupied with resisting what is happening or what might happen is a mind that has redirected processing capacity from the present task to a management function that, by definition, cannot succeed. You cannot think your way out of thought by thinking harder about it. Psychological interference is not anxiety. It is a specific cognitive function, the continuous allocation of attentional resources to monitoring and managing a situation that the monitoring cannot resolve. The mind creates a secondary process, a supervisory loop that runs alongside the primary task, and that loop consumes the same substrate as the task itself. Two processes competing for the same bandwidth, both slowed. The interference is structural, not emotional. The installation begins with an appraisal. This must not be allowed to happen. The nervous system treats the appraisal as a threat signal. Threat signals activate the monitoring system. The monitoring system scans continuously for evidence of the threat. And the scanning, because it requires the object of monitoring to be held in working memory, keeps the threat perpetually present. The mind cannot monitor for something without thinking about it. And thinking about it prevents the very state it was trying to produce. Epictetus made the distinction with precision that modern cognitive science would take centuries to formalize between what is up to us and what is not. His point was not resignation. It was attentional economy. A mind that directs its processing toward what it cannot influence is a mind that has misallocated its only resource. Not morally, mechanically. The central illusion is protective in its logic. If something threatens, if a relationship is unstable, if a career is uncertain, if a health result is pending, then vigilance feels like the appropriate response. The mind reasons, I cannot be taken by surprise if I am already watching. The problem is that vigilance is not the same as readiness. Vigilance is a state of sustained threat processing, and sustained threat processing degrades the very capacities, clarity, flexibility, speed of response that readiness would require. This is a specific cost of control illusion. The more tightly the mind grips, the less it can do with what it holds. The grip is not protective. It is the mechanism of the problem it was designed to solve. A muscle held in sustained contraction does not strengthen, it fatigues. An attentional system held in sustained vigilance does not protect. It exhausts the cognitive resources that would be required to respond effectively if the feared event actually arrived. Lao Tzu's formulation is the most compressed description of the mechanism in any language, not a moral instruction, a system's observation. A system that expends its energy resisting its environment loses a capacity to act within it. The tree that survives a storm is not the one with the strongest trunk. It is the one whose roots hold while the branches move. In 1986, psychologist Stephen Hayes at the University of Nevada developed what would become acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. His central finding was specific and clinically counterintuitive. The attempt to suppress, avoid, or control unwanted psychological experiences systematically increases their frequency, intensity, and influence over behavior. Hayes called this experiential avoidance, and he documented it with precision across thousands of clinical cases. The mind that fights its own contents generates more what it fights. Hayes' finding built on earlier work by Daniel Wegner at Harvard University, the white bear experiments of 1987. Participants asked to suppress the thought of a white bear produced a white bear more frequently than control groups who were not asked to suppress it. Wegner called this ironic process theory. The very mechanism of suppression requires maintaining the suppressed content in active memory as the target of suppression. The monitoring creates what it monitors for. What ACT proposes, and what decades of clinical research have confirmed, is not that the mind should stop experiencing difficult content. It is that the mind should change its relationship to that content. The distinction is precise. Fusion versus diffusion. In fusion, the mind treats its thoughts as literal truth that must be acted upon or eliminated. In diffusion, the mind observes those thoughts as passing events, as content, not commands. The difficult experience remains. The interference it generates does not. Marcus Aurelius returned to the same observation in his private diaries across decades of crisis governance, not as consolation, as operational note. The energy spent resisting what had already happened was energy unavailable for what needed to happen next. What his meditations document is not the achievement of peace. It is a repeated, effortful practice of redirecting attention from what could not be changed to what remained within his sphere of influence. He did not find it easy. He wrote it down daily because daily he needed to reinstall it. Marcia Linehan, the psychologist who developed dialectical behavior therapy at the University of Washington in the 1980s, built her entire framework around what she called radical acceptance. Linehan herself had been institutionalized as a young woman, diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. She later acknowledged that her recovery began not when her circumstances improved, but when she stopped requiring her circumstances to be different before she could begin. What Linehan documented clinically, and what Constable painted without knowing it, is the same state, a system in which the energy is available for the task because it is not being consumed by resistance to the task's conditions. The river in the Haywind does not resist the banks. The work is happening within conditions that are accepted rather than fought. The invisible cost of non-acceptance is not the original pain. The original pain is proportional to what happened. The invisible cost is what the mind generates secondarily, through the sustained refusal to acknowledge what has already occurred. Every event, once it has happened, is permanent. It cannot be made to not have happened. And the mind that continues to allocate resources to the project of making it not have happened, through rumination, through counterfactual thinking, through sustained anger at its occurrence, is paying a cost with no possible return. Not because the anger is wrong, because it cannot accomplish what it is attempting. Psychologist Paul Gilbert at the University of Derby spent decades studying what he called self-criticism as threat response, the specific pattern in which the mind responds to failure or loss by activating the same threat processing system it would use for an external danger. The finding was precise. Self-critical rumination does not produce correction. It produces further threat activation. The response to the wound becomes a second wound of equivalent or greater magnitude. Frankel's observation from inside Auschwitz is not an instruction. It is a documented finding that the single variable which remained under the prisoner's control, the relationship to what was happening, was a variable most predictive of whether the person could continue to function. Not happiness, not freedom from suffering, the capacity to exist within the circumstances without requiring the circumstances to be different as a precondition for existing. The mind does not work better when a person decides to let go. Deciding to let go is still a form of doing, still a management function directed at the experience. The mind works better when the interference decreases. And interference decreases when the monitoring system is no longer scanning for something to resist. Not because the difficult thing has been resolved, but because the resources that were allocated to resisting it have been returned to the system that was trying to function. The release is not an achievement. It is a structural change in where the mind's processing is directed, and it is not accomplished once. It is accomplished every time the monitoring loop activates and the mind, noticing it is activated, chooses not to follow it into familiar construction. That choice, repeated, changes the architecture, slowly, without drama. The mind that has stopped fighting what it cannot change does not become passive. It becomes available for what is actually happening. Inner observer. Observe your mind. Understand reality.